In room 640, the joint counter-terrorist group, of which she had been a member for the best part of a year, met at 8:30 a.m. every Monday morning. The meeting's purpose was to coordinate operations relating to terror networks and to set weekly intelligence targets. The group was run by Liz's 45-year-old head of section, Charles Weatherby, and made up of MI5 investigators and agent runners and liaison officers from MI6, GCHQ, and Metropolitan Police Special Branch, with Home Office and Foreign Office attending as required. It had been created immediately after the World Trade Center atrocity, following the Prime Minister's insistence that there must be no question of terror-related intelligence being compromised by lack of communication or turf wars of any kind. This was not a point that anyone had been in a mood to argue with. In her 10 years with the service, Liz could not remember such unflinching unanimity of purpose. To her relief, Liz saw that although the doors to the conference room were open, no one had yet sat down. Thank you, God. She would not have to endure all those patient male glances as she took her place at the long oval hardwood table. Charles Weatherby had assumed an expectant attitude by the window, his pressed suit and polished Oxfords a mute reproach to Liz's clothes. The ghost of a smile, however, touched his uneven features. "We're waiting for 6, he murmured, glancing in the direction of Vauxhall Cross, half a mile upriver. "I suggest you catch your breath and adopt an attitude of saintly patience." "Anything come up over the weekend?" she asked, placing the dark blue folder on the table. "Nothing that's going to keep us here too long." He ran large jointed fingers through his greying hair. 6 are bringing over someone new, apparently, one of their Pakistan people, Bruno Mackay, an old Harrovian. "As in the story of the woman who walks into a room where there are 3 former public school boys. The Etonian asks her if she'd like to sit down, the Wycomist pulls up a chair, and the Harrovian sits on it," said Weatherby with a pale smile. "Exactly." Glancing over her shoulder, he murmured, "I think we finally have a full house." MI6 were represented by Geoffrey Fain, their coordinator of counter-terrorist operations, and by the newcomer, Bruno Mackay. Hands were shaken, and Weatherby moved smartly across the room to close the doors. A summary of weekend reports from overseas security services lay beside each place. Mackay was welcomed to Thames House and introduced to the team. The MI6 officer had just returned from Islamabad, Weatherby informed them, where he had been a much-valued deputy head of station. Mackay raised his hands in modest demurral. Tanned and grey-eyed, his flannel suit murmuring unmistakably of Savile Row, he cut a glamorous figure in this generally nondescript gathering. As he leaned forward to reply to Weatherby, Geoffrey Fain watched with chilly approval. He'd obviously gone to some efforts to maneuver the younger man onto the team. With the courtesies done, the group began to work their way through the overseas reports. Geoffrey Fain started the ball rolling. A tall, aquiline figure, Fain had built his career on MI6's Middle Eastern desk, where he had acquired a reputation for unswerving ruthlessness. His subject was the ITS, the Islamic Terror Syndicate, the generic title for groups like Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and the myriad others like them. When Fain had finished speaking, he darted his patrician gaze leftwards at his younger colleague. Leaning forward, Bruno Mackay shot his cuffs and addressed his notes. "If I might return briefly to my old stomping ground, Pakistan Liaison has reported a sighting of Dawood al-Safar. Their report suggests that al-Safar has visited a training camp near Takht-i-Suleiman in the tribal northwest of the country and may have made contact with a group known as the Children of Heaven, who are suspected of involvement in the murder of a U.S. embassy guard in Islamabad 6 months ago. Our feeling at Vauxhall is that this activity is significant," continued Mackay urbanely. "2 reasons. 1, al-Safar's principal role is as a bagman moving cash between Riyadh and the Asian terror groups. If he's on the move, then something nasty's in the pipeline. 2, the Children of Heaven are one of the few ITS groups thought to have included Caucasians in their ranks. A Pakistani intelligence service surveillance report from about 6 months ago indicated the presence in the camp of, and I quote, 2, perhaps 3 individuals of identifiably Western appearance." He extended spatulate, sun-browned fingers on the table in front of him. Our concern, and we've communicated this over the weekend to all stations, is that the opposition may be about to deploy an invisible." He let the remark hang for a moment. An invisible was CIA speak for the ultimate intelligence nightmare. The terrorist who, because he or she is an ethnic native of the target country, can cross its borders unchecked, move around that country unquestioned, and infiltrate its institutions with ease. An invisible was the worst possible news. The Home Office man frowned. "What's your view on likely targets and the timing of all this? We should probably up the security status of all government buildings from black to red, but that causes administrative problems, and I don't want to move on it too soon." Mackay glanced at his notes. "Pakistan is already checking all passenger lists out of the country, with particular reference to, non-business visitors under 35 whose stay has exceeded 30 days. So they're very much onto the case. No idea of targets yet, but we'll keep our ears very close to the ground." He looked across at Weatherby and then at Liz. "And we need to stay in constant touch with our agents this end, too." "That's already happening," said Weatherby. "If they hear about anything, so will we. But so far—" He glanced interrogatively at the GCHQ rep, who pursed his lips non-committally. "We've had a bit more background noise than usual. No specific indicators, though. Nothing approaching the traffic you'd associate with a major operation." Liz's eyes met Mackay's. He didn't smile or look away, but stared straight back. She continued her scan of the room, but knew that the MI6 officer was still watching her, felt the slow, cold burn of his gaze. Weatherby, in turn, his tired, forgettable features voided of all expression, was watching Mackay. The circuit held for a long, taut moment, and then Fane cut in, with a general question about MI5 agents in the UK's militant Islamic communities. "Just how close to the action are these people of yours? Would they be amongst the need-to-knows if a major ITS operation was being mounted against this country?" Weatherby let Liz field it. "In most cases, probably not. But we've got people in the right orbits. Time will see them move closer to the centre." "Time? We're not in a position to accelerate the process." She had decided not to mention marzipan. The agent would have been a strong card to play, but he had yet to prove his worth, or for that matter his courage. At this early stage in his career as an agent, she wasn't prepared to reveal him, certainly not to a circle as wide as this one. And Mackay, she realized with a faint sinking sensation, was still watching her. Was she unknowingly transmitting some kind of bat-like sexual sonar? Or was Mackay one of those men who felt that he had to establish a complicity with every woman who crossed his path, so that afterwards he could tell himself that he could have had her if he'd wanted? Either way, she felt more irritated than flattered. A Eurostar train from Paris was pulling into the terminus at Waterloo Station. Halfway along its length, a young woman stepped from the soporific warmth of a second-class carriage into the bracing chill of the platform and was borne on a hurrying crowd towards the terminus building. Electronic announcements echoed along the covered way, overlaying the rattle of baggage trolleys and the whirring of wheeled suitcases, sounds so familiar to the woman that she barely registered them. In the past couple of years she had made the journey to and from the Gare du Nord at least a dozen times. She was wearing a parka jacket over jeans and Nike trainers, on her head a brown corduroy Beatles cap from a stall on the Quai des Célestins, its peak pulled low over her face, and, despite the overcast day, a pair of aviator sunglasses. She looked somewhere in her early 20s. She was carrying a hold-all and a large rucksack, and there was nothing to distinguish her from the other long weekenders who spilled cheerfully from the train. A careful observer might have noted just how little of the woman was actually on display. The parka entirely disguised her figure, the cap completely covered her hair, the sunglasses obscured her eyes, and a very careful observer might have wondered at her unseasonally sunburnt hands. But on that Monday morning no one was paying a great deal of attention to the day's second consignment of passengers. At the Avis rent-a-car counter the woman joined a 4-strong queue, and if she was conscious of the CCTV camera mounted on the wall above her, she gave no sign of it. Instead, opening the morning's edition of the International Herald Tribune, she appeared to bury